Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Well, hello everybody at Luke Rides. Luke Rides is back with another workshop video here for you at the channel. So what you're going to be learning here today is how do you install or refit the front superbike wheel for the exotica. There's the ZX10R SuperBike. You're looking at the 2015 4th generation, and there is a procedure to it, and you do need a bit of muscle strength when you lift that front wheel. But let's not waste any time. Get into it. Yeah.
It's showtime.
A cup of tea and you cleaned up beautifully. Nice and easy. It's just a spacer. I think if there was anything on there, it was only a light film of dirt. So there's a comparison before and after. So you can see there is wear on this spacer. Okay, can you see that wear? And that wear is where this spacer has spun at some point. Okay, because it's consistent. Do you see that? See the three shiny lines? So at some point, what would generally happen is this spacer would be, and it won't move. But at some point it has spun, and it's caused those grooves. You can hardly feel them, but they are there. Again, this is the near side spacer, and that one's cleaning up quite nicely too. And I guess there's just a light bit of dirt. There's certainly no grease on it, but they're coming out a treat. Coming out lovely. This is what we like. Wheel back on now, which is a pretty straightforward process of just slotting it in. Luckily we've got ours up in the air, so it's not bashing old or anything. Let's get those spacers back in, right? So here goes the first one. Looking good. Here goes the near side spacer. Looking good. Now all I've got to do is get the wheel back into position. I'm going to have to lift it up slightly whilst placing the spindle in. Let's hope I don't knock any of those spacers out.
There, right there. Shit. Oh, okay.
So all we're going to do now is get the spindle in and start threading it in by hand. Remember, the two locking pins that came out had no lubrication, and they certainly didn't have any Loctite on them. So given that Kawasaki, in their infinite wisdom, have done it this way, that is exactly how I'm going to do it. Isn't that nice with the chamfered heads? Do you see that? So they've actually machined material away to make them just a little bit lighter.
Superbike.
So now that the spindle's in and tightened up, I'm going to tighten them up. I'm starting by hand. Just nipping them up. See the gap closing now? So you can imagine these pinch bolts don't have to be super tight. So now the gap is almost up, you can't even see it. And I'm just going to tighten up these pinch bolts. If you over tighten the pinch bolts, what will happen is it will end up cracking. I love this tool, it just fits so beautifully. There we go. And that's about as hand tight as I want them to be. And you can see there's like no gap now. It's really closed this in together. It's locked, although we tighten this up, it's locked it in. Look at that, it spins beautiful, right?
Beautiful, Governor.
Okay, let's put those calipers back together. Let's start by releasing the caliper and see if we can get them actually installed. If I'm going to struggle or anything like that, I can always go to this tool, which just helps spread them apart a little bit more. Cool. Caliper bolts going back in. I'm never keen on using a power tool in case they cross thread. Can you imagine getting the fork tube out of this? Taking it all apart and having to separate these two in order to get a replacement. I don't think you can even get that part on its own, can you?
What torque settings would you recommend if you had to?
50 Newton meters. I don't know. You should look it up. Might be 35 for all you know. Look at it this way. I'm going to argue with everyone now. Look at it this way, right? There's a reason that the bolts are going down this way. Because to be fair, when this wheel's rotating and the pads are crushing onto the disc, the forces are not in that direction, are they? They're not in that direction. They're in this direction, yeah? So you've got rotation, the forces are in this direction, the pads are grabbing on, everything's being yanked that way. So these can be 30 Newton meters, these can be 50 Newton meters. There's no, apart from tearing forces that way, there's no actual forces that way. I think about, I don't know, 35, 40 Newton meters, something like that. Just to make sure that they are not just split at the bottom, but split at the top, so there's an even gap. And then I'm going to offer them to the rotor. Pop the caliper on. There we go. Again, being careful with that ABS sensor. I think it's safe that I can now install the ABS sensor.
On a superbike, that makes quite a difference, knowing that you've got that extra braking power. And when you put on the anchors, the computer's going to assist you to scrub off that speed at over 200 miles an hour, over 100 miles an hour on these superbikes, without you locking the front or rear wheel, and then ditching your superbike and destroying it, and hurting yourself at the same time. Very impressive technology.
So I'm just going to use that little 6mm just to do up the sensor. It's probably like 8 Newton meters. It's not going to be anything exciting. There we go. And then again, I always do these up by hand rather than with a power tool, because if you cross thread them, I suspect you can't buy this section on its own, and why would you want to wreck everybody's fun? Or buying new forks when you could have done it by hand. Okay, now I'm just going to do them up. So what we're going to do now, because the fluid is nice and high, I'm going to use the front brake and I'm going to pump it gently, and what that's going to do is it's going to cause all of the pistons to push against those new pads, both sides, So here we go.
See how there's no
brake at all. I can go right back to the throttle.
And
But what's happening is the fluid's going to go lower as the pistons, all 8 pistons, are now being pushed. Okay, see the fluid just starting to go down, and I'm starting to feel it now.
No, you get resistance.
Oh yeah. Okay. So we have working brakes, and it doesn't hurt just to go over a few things. Yep, we've tightened them up. That was tightened up. Yep, I've tightened all of this up. You know, just a quick go over what you've done.
Well, hello everybody here at Luke Rides. So, Luke Rides hopes that you found that actually quite interesting. And there is a technique, as you saw, to reinstalling the front wheel on the ZX10R SuperBike. Not straightforward, but it could be a lot more difficult. That's the beauty and one of the nice things about modern superbikes is how, compared to say a motorcycle from 25-30 years ago, they are less stress or less difficult to work on compared to a lot of compared to a motorcycle 20-30 years ago. So motorcycles really have moved on. Superbikes have changed massively from the likes of the GP-Z900R all the way to the ZX9, all the way to the ZX10. But yeah, what a gorgeous superbike to work on. Really good. Everything came apart really nicely, and no bolts cross-threaded, and it was actually pretty good. It was pretty good. Having those monoblock brakes as well, the superbike monoblock brakes, so that was also an easy installation. So fantastic. Question is, can Luke Rice drink his coffee before we move on to another workshop video? Should we try it now? Should we try it? Oh bollocks! No!
Oh my god! They've killed Kenny! You bastard!
Why do us advanced motorcyclists, advanced bikers get this? So difficult. Can't drink our coffees. Yeah.
The way we...
The little rascal has spirit. As water.
This is the end of the trail for me.
Thank you.
Thank you, kid.
That is the most beautiful thing I have ever seen.
Of love.